So I got there. I mean, you're kind of just in a daze just because it's all so new and I don't know, it's just really weird. My mission, I remember going to the mission home there, and it was really good. It felt like it felt like my house. It felt like, and maybe it's just because like my mission president and his family were from Utah, I don't know, or from where I was from, but anyway, so it felt just super homey, super welcoming, which was really helpful for me. We went through like some exercise with or some like games / exercises with the assistants and the president, and we like bore our testimonies and said stuff in our languages and stuff like that, like just for fun. It wasn't like a test. And so that was good, and they just kind of made everyone feel good and welcome and appreciated. And we had dinner, and then I'm trying to think. For your first days out there, I was kind of surprised. I'll be honest, I was kind of hoping for something a little bit more exotic. It was kind of like there's palm trees and stuff, but where I was just like, man, this is still America. But I kind of got over that. So I was never actually in Fort Lauderdale, but in terms of like my whole mission, what it looks like and feels like, it's very tropical. I guess like if you've been to Florida anywhere in Disney World or wherever, it would be the same kind of feel. But very tropical, very, very green, very rainy, but very sunny also. It's not like the West Coast or like Oregon or whatever. Very sunny, but very humid. Yeah, some big cities, and then there's places where there's like extremely nice neighborhoods, and then really, really like ghetto, low income, poor neighborhoods right next to it, and so there's a lot of contrast. In terms of mission history, I know that there's about 5 million people within our mission. It's one of like the most condensed areas. And then I know that, so something cool is that right now it's going to be dedicated in like February, I think, of this next year. The temple's being built right in the middle of the mission. And so for a long time, it was like the most populated area without a temple. And so some really cool things happened. And anyways, they announced the temple about 2 years ago, and there's a lot of change happening, a lot of growth happening because of that. So I taught multiple people, like not just a person or two, but like tons of people from 20 different Spanish-speaking countries. So like every Spanish-speaking country, I think, in the world. There might have been one that was missing, but so it's a super big melting pot of all cultures. And obviously if you go English speaking, you'll be with different people, but it's a big melting pot for them as well. But yeah, so I was Spanish speaking in the Fort Lauderdale Mission, and there's tons of Cubans, tons of people from the islands there, really interesting accents and personalities, and really, really fun. And there's a lot of Mexicans, a lot of people from Honduras, a lot of people from everywhere, every Spanish-speaking country. So it's really, really fun to be able to learn a little, like, bits about each of their culture and how to adapt and how to help them and understand them. Just because someone speaks the same language doesn't mean, or say they're from two different countries, doesn't mean they have the same cultures and backgrounds and beliefs, but every single country has a very different culture and very different and different traditions. And so there's things that, go together, like I just said, but I think we misunderstand people sometimes and just think, oh, they're just Hispanic, or they're if you're from Utah, they're just from Mexico or whatever. But people, that was a big learning thing for me, just understanding each individual culture from each country, and even within those countries, kind of different cultures that there were. So that was good to be able to understand people better and not generalize so much. One thing I think that I learned from kind of like Latin American culture in general is, or I mean, and you can throw in the Caribbean and everything else as well, but is giving. Their giving nature. Doesn't matter, and I mean, maybe that sounds trite, but like it doesn't matter like how poor they were or whatever, like they would give you like their nicest snack or their nicest whatever when you came over, like no matter what. And so and with I think with like complete faith that they'd be fine by doing that they weren't being dumb by serving you and giving you something. So I think I learned to give without worrying about it, and learn to share. I think that's a huge kind of positive or cool thing that their culture, that Latin American culture, is really good at. So there's hurricane warnings there, like every, I think it's like May to September or something like that is when it's like you're constantly under hurricane warning. So we got ready, but there was never, luckily for us, there's never an actual hurricane that came through. There is just crazy storms, just crazy intense storms that maybe are more normal just on the East Coast, or I don't know, in more rainy states, but we always called it just the wall. Like you could just see it coming towards you, and like literally you could see it coming, and you'd have to like run to your car, and it would just hit, it would just slam down, and you'd be soaked just in, you know what I mean, just in seconds, because that's just how it went. So yeah, some intense tropical storms and lightning storms and stuff like that. When I was there, the mission was about half car, half bike areas, and I never got good at the other stuff because just by chance I just ended up being in car my whole mission. And so I mean, so we went out on bikes sometimes, but yeah, tips, there's crazy, it's really different driving there, like the whole like driving from out of the country gets transferred in there, and it's really there's some just like funny things that people do, and it's very fluid. You just kind of have to go with the flow, and people do things that you wouldn't normally do in depending on where you live. So that's kind of exciting. I actually really liked that. But yeah, other than that, I think it's pretty standard. In where I was in our part of the mission, there's not that many roaming around. Like sometimes like I had a few companions and stuff that just saw like one on the road. But there is the Everglades in the bottom of the mission, and so like we went there on a P-Day one time, and that was kind of cool, and went out on a fan boat ride, and there's alligators that swim up and kind of crazy stuff. But what you do see all over the place is iguanas. They're everywhere, and huge iguanas. So that's kind of fun. Those are all over the place. Fantastic food. Holy cow. Because you got to try something from every single country and just learn the best foods from every country and not get sick of any of them. It was such good food. So I guess from El Salvador, there's pupusas. Can't miss those. From Honduras, there's baleadas. Can't miss those either. Those are excellent. They're like, it's a flour tortilla, and there's beans, crema, cheese, egg, steak, and avocado. It's really good. There's that, and then there's arepas from Colombia. 2 different kinds. Both are really, really good. And then you've got, let's see, I'm trying to think. Cuban food is really good. They have really good beans and really good like fried pork. And I could go on for a long time. I don't know how long you'd want me to go on, but yeah, lots of really, really good food in Fort Lauderdale. I think especially for Spanish speaking, or for the Spanish side. There's mango trees everywhere, and in August, around August I think it is, there's just mangoes everywhere. You'll have mangoes in your fridge, people give you mangoes, you can pick up mangoes off the street, there's just mangoes everywhere. So that's kind of nice, and they're really good. And there's other trees, there's star fruit and some more exotic stuff like that too. So if you go to Florida and you're anywhere near Hollywood, the Hollywood area, you need to go to El Típico Guanaco. It's a Honduran and El Salvadorian restaurant and has the most incredible pupusas and baleadas you'll ever eat in your life. Hands down. So go there. I'm not getting paid to tell you this. That's the best place that you can eat in Florida. I would say just don't worry about it. And because there's places that are supposedly like, I don't know, the number 3 per capita murders in the world. I don't know, like, so, you know what I mean? You hear stats like that, but like there, I never felt threatened. There's some areas where you can't go, just a couple of areas where you're not supposed to go at night, and a couple areas that are just totally off limits, like towards the beach, and there's a couple places over there that they just don't send missionaries just because it's not a good environment. But in terms of safety, there is some like some robbery and stuff like that happens, and you just shouldn't go certain places at night. But as a whole, it's not extremely dangerous. You know what I mean? I think like not too many missionaries got robbed or anything, or mugged or anything like that. I don't remember hardly anyone at all that got mugged. So overall, I would say it's pretty safe. Don't worry about it. You'll be like, you might have an interesting story or two. There's places where, you know, some missionaries said they'd heard gunshots at night and stuff like that. But as on the whole, I'd say it's not too dangerous. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say because I didn't go for it, you know what I mean? I didn't experience both ends, and I kind of had that in my mind of like, man, am I, you know what I mean? Am I not getting as good of like a Spanish understanding because of this? And probably in some terms of like slang and stuff like that, I maybe didn't. But I think just if you work at it consistently and you're trying to, you're actually like doing your language study and you're trying to, you're asking people questions when you don't understand them and you're not defaulting to English, I think you can do just fine. And yeah, I don't know, that's hard. One thing that someone told me, and I think might be true, is that a lot of times it's easier to pick up when you're in a foreign country, but it's also a little bit easier to lose just because it's kind of black and white. And then it's a little bit harder to pick up when you're in stateside, but it's a little bit easier to keep because you're used to going back and forth between languages. And I think maybe that's true, but again, I don't know because I didn't I didn't serve in a foreign country as well, so I don't know. There's been a lot of growth recently, like from when I began there. Obviously, you know, there's all different elements of missionary work, and baptizing is just one of them. But since I went there, and then I've been home when I began my mission is about 5 years ago, I know that they're baptizing almost 5 times as many people monthly consistently. And so there's a lot of, I think, really because of the temple and just a lot of faith from the members and leadership and a lot of things like that. There's just a lot of growth happening, which is really, really cool. And another thing, just in terms of mission, the actual mission and the culture and everything, is I think it's one of the most tight knit and just very obedient, which is something that I learned about there is the importance of obedience, and what like unity and just the miracles that can come when you're being obedient. Me and my companion, our car, something was wrong with it, and so we were at Firestone or Jiffy Lube, I don't know, some car place, and sitting in the waiting room, and we were just sitting there, and there's probably like 6 or so other people in there, and I don't know, like, if you can imagine just like a normal waiting room, like it's pretty silent, and everyone just sits there and reads their magazine and kind of stays in their own little bubble. And for some reason that day, I was just sitting there thinking, and I just had like the thought, like, you should talk about the Book of Mormon right now. And I was like, really? That's really awkward, like really awkward, and going to be weird to interrupt everyone. And so I sat there and kind of argued, internally for like a few minutes, and it was like, no, you should really talk about the Book of Mormon right now. And I was like, oh my gosh, okay. And so anyways, so I reached in my bag, and I was like, oh boy, here we go. And pulled out a Book of Mormon and just looked at it, and I was like, okay. And I was like, so, I can't remember what I said. I was like, so sorry to interrupt your magazine reading, but I'm a missionary, and I just kind of like launched into like, or I guess I said, I'm a missionary, and I was just sitting here thinking, I have this thing that's really important to me, and that I should share it, and that I want to share with you guys. And so people kind of looked up and were just like, what in the heck? And so I just started talking, and just looked at everyone, and just started talking, and talked about the Book of Mormon, and kind of went through the whole first lesson, Joseph Smith's story and everything. And I was kind of laughing to myself inside, because as I was talking, like one by one, people just kind of like got up and walked out. And I was like, man, this is going great. And so they started getting up and walking out, and I just kept talking. But there was one girl who was listening really, like, pretty in, what's the word? Attentively? Paying close attention. And so as everyone walked out, it finally ended up being just her sitting there. And she was paying really close attention. And like, we got down to the Joseph Smith story, and I went through the vision and went over, just sat next to her so I could just talk to her. And anyways, she was really interested. She loved what we talked about, and kind of, there's just a really strong spirit in the room, and she was just kind of like captivated by the whole thing. And so anyways, so she ended up living in another mission outside of our mission, so we sent the referral along and gave her a Book of Mormon and stuff. So I don't know what the end of that story was. But it was just a good lesson in when I had a prompting, and I was like, no, this is going to be ridiculous. But it actually turned out really neat, and God knew that, that lady in there would listen to that. The gospel of Jesus Christ, his plan, his teachings, his life, what happened in the scriptures, the revelation from Joseph Smith, Joseph Smith's life, all these different things that make up what is the gospel of Jesus Christ that we have now, and the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I know that it's real. I really know that from personal experience, from real experiences that I've had that I can't deny, that are actual things that have happened. And that's a blessing to me, because I know that it's not based on tradition. It's not something that just makes us better. It's not just a good way to live. But it's something that is real and has impact. I also know that Jesus Christ was a real person, that he established his church and taught his gospel. I know that we have a loving, and that he obviously atoned for our sins. I know that God and Jesus Christ, that our Heavenly Father and Jesus Christ love us deeply, very, very deeply, and that we can be filled with that love. And I know that that change and repentance and forgiveness and really just miracles of any kind are possible through the power of God, and that I also learned that those are the biggest miracles. Other things can happen, but that's what really, really matters, because it's between people and between you and God. I learned that the Book of Mormon is real, it's true, and and that Joseph Smith was a prophet and that he did translate it. And I would challenge anyone that's reading this, that's watching this, whether member, non-member, or preparing to go on a mission, to test it out and to put some, really to test it out, to ask God if these things are true, to take Moroni's promise, and to put some weight behind it, to be willing to change your life however you need to, if it's true. And I say that in the name of Jesus Christ, amen. One of the strongest converts that I worked with, he was just walking along one day, and some of the English missionaries just bumped into him, just told him this in the Spanish that they could. They wrote, I think, the address of the church, and gave it to him, and he came to church, just decided to come to church that next Sunday, and we met with him. He got baptized, I think 3 weeks later, and kind of just one of those stories where it's just out of nowhere, and he just ate up the gospel, and he lived his own whole life, gone to a lot of different churches, and just nothing clicked. Until he came to church and just ate it up, came out with us to teach all the time after that. So that's one example of just the Lord guiding people. One of the scary things I think of missionary work is extending people baptismal dates. That's always just kind of like an intense moment between everyone. And so in one of my areas, we had, there's a lady or a sister that we were teaching, they were really good friends with, and she'd been being taught for, I can't remember how long, it was maybe 2 or 3 years or something like that, a couple of years, kind of on and off. And she really knew it was true, I think, but she just didn't want to take the step. And so we'd been teaching her for a while, and it kind of it was getting to the point where okay, we should start moving towards baptism more seriously. And we prayed, me and my companion prayed to know of the right date to extend to her. And so we were praying, and a day, I think it was the next week, I think, that day came to mind. So extremely soon it came to mind. And so we prayed, and we kind of sat there, and I was like, no way, that is way too, because she still had really cold feet about it. But I talked to my companion, and he had felt the same way about that same day, and so we're like, oh, that's weird. And so I think we prayed again, and we just felt really strongly that we needed to extend the invitation to her to get baptized on that day. And so that was really scary, because you know what I mean, you don't want to scare someone off, but we felt that was the right day. And we went and had our lesson with her. Or we had a really short lesson. Really, really short. And then just extended the date to her. And we were sitting there, and we extended it to her, and she just sat there, and she kept starting to say something and then stopping, and then starting to say something and then stopping. And we were kind of on the edge of our seat the whole time. But anyways, so she said, okay, I'll let you know, in a couple days or something. I'll call you and let you know. And so anyways, so she called back, said yes, that she'd be baptized, and she was baptized that I think it was the next week. But the cool thing for us is just that we extended the date at that time, and she told us later that she had decided firmly in her mind that day she was going to tell us that she was not going to get baptized, and just that, you know what I mean, that's how it was, and that she was going to tell us that she's going to tell us no, and that she opened her mouth, and she literally like couldn't say the words. No, like she literally couldn't say the words. And so that was just obviously a miracle and miraculous experience for us to see, just responding to our own impression and going forward with her, how that blessed her life and blessed us, and being able to help her get baptized. I learned how to change, I think, was the biggest thing, and I learned the power of change. I learned how to repent and what that really means. And obviously you're supposed to do that before your mission. I did that as well, but just at a deeper level. And man, I learned to be honest with myself and with others, like no matter what, and to be just very real with people, and that's a great way to be. I learned to love so much, like, more seriously and strongly than I had before. You learn how to get along with other people, such as like living with a companion, and you learn to actually like love that. Like I felt like really lonely and weird when I got home. And what else? Yeah, everything changes, I think, when, at least for me, because I probably had a lot to change, but and that's just comes with living the gospel. But yeah, those are some of the main things. And I think, I guess one more thing is, one of the biggest blessings was seeing the reality, or so gaining a testimony of the reality of the gospel, of when you, how do I phrase this? Just that it's real. Just that no matter, like, if I believe it, you believe it, if the whole world believes it or doesn't believe it, it's real, and it's like universal law. Like the gospel is real, and it's not changing either way. And so coming to understand that, and then when you apply like faith and prayer to something and seeing a real change happen, a real big change. For us, it was the temple. That was like a big monument to that change. Understanding that those things really happen when you apply them, and in the Lord's time, obviously. Number one, like, I have my biased opinion. I think Florida is the greatest mission in the world. And so, advice for people going there, oh man, get excited. I would say, okay, so here's something, this is just a tip in general that I think is like a hard transition from coming to like normal life to the mission, is to be okay, like that it's not cool anymore, and it's not helpful to the mission to be a rebel, so to speak. Like, you can, obviously you should have your own ideas and be independent, and try new things and stuff like that. But I think as a cultural, like, or a culture before the mission, you're used to rebelling against your teachers or the principal, and that's just kind of the cool thing to do. And even normal, nice people, that's just kind of like what you do. But in the mission, that's something I think that's hard to let go, but hard for people to let go, but that you really need to let go, because it's not cool anymore to rebel against your mission president, because that's who God called to be with you right there. And it's not cool to rebel against leaders, because it messes up the whole spiritual flow. So that's a change, and that's an advice I would give, is be willing to put that aside. And it doesn't mean you have to be submissive and weird or whatever, but just to not find your like identity in rebelling anymore, just to put that on the shelf for a little while and focus on the work, and be willing to go with what a leader has put forth. So that's an advice I would give. My main advice for anyone that's about to go to Fort Lauderdale or on a mission in general is to work to get a testimony. and build it and grow it and keep it and live the gospel, and everything else will take care of itself if you have that down. I mean, not really have it down, but have it good. So that's number one. Number two, if you're going to Fort Lauderdale, you are in for the experience of a lifetime. You'll see things change and miracles happen that you didn't dream possible. And I congratulate you on your call. I'm excited for you.
I remember going to the transfer meeting. So, well, we first arrived in Florida, and we went out with the APs, and we did the whole, like, we all had to place a Book of Mormon, and then, you know, dinner with the mission president and his wife, all that. But then the next day we had our transfer meeting in which we were all assigned our trainers. And I remember that everyone was telling me that I had the best trainer in the whole mission, and I was super excited to go out and work with Elder Ovar. But, and then we drove the 4 hours down to Homestead, because the Fort Lauderdale Mission is very long, but and Homestead's at the very southern tip of the peninsula. But we go down there and we got right to work. Like, there was no unpacking or anything. I remember our first visit that we went to was with Angela, and it was super awkward because I'm expecting to go out as a missionary and, you know, start teaching people and have fun, but we go out there and the very first person I meet, she's like, you know, I'm just not feeling this whole church thing. I don't want to meet with you guys anymore. So it was like the very first meeting we had, we were dropped. So it's kind of a disappointing, like a letdown moment to start off the mission, but then, you know, it just goes up from there. I got back 2 years ago, and back when I was in the mission, it encompassed Lake Okeechobee, which is kind of like dead center in the middle. It was straight down and straight over, and then everything below that, including part of the Keys. We had about 250 missionaries. I'd say almost half of them were sisters, actually, which is super awesome. I can't remember how many stakes we had there, but once I got home, they actually split and created a new stake, which is super awesome, you know, that we had that much growth in that area. We also had the temple dedicated while I was there, so that was amazing, being able to participate in the cultural celebration and the dedication, taking investigators up there. The wards are very different. They tend to be very small, depending where you're at, but they're down in Homestead, where I spent most of my time, they were all bilingual. And so you would have Spanish and English people teaching the lessons or giving talks or conducting the meetings, and you would have translation devices if you didn't understand both languages. So that was super interesting, super fun, very different than Utah, you know. Right. They're about wards of 100, so they're a good ward, you know, every calling's filled, but there's definitely room for growth. Since we have Miami in the mission, Miami's like the large part of it. It's a huge melting pot of different ethnic backgrounds and cultural histories. There's a lot of Cubans, a lot of Cuban immigrants. We have a lot of Haitian Creoles, Jamaicans, Dominican Republics. Like, basically every Latin culture is represented there in Miami. And so you can't really pinpoint one specific culture there. But the predominant religion, I would say, is Catholic. There's a whole lot of Catholics. There's also a lot of Jews and Muslims down there as well. But, yeah. It's a lot of fun teaching all the Catholics because, you know, most of them, they're like, you know, I'm Catholic because my mom was Catholic and I have to be Catholic for my mom, even though she's dead. And so it's very different trying to teach them because they believe it, but they're so tied to their Catholic roots that it's kind of a trick trying to get them to leave their history. We had a hard time getting people to come to church. I think that's a very large trend in that mission, is that, you know, a lot of people that are super willing to let you into their home and teach them, and they might even be willing to read the Book of Mormon, but they have a hard time coming to church. Just, you know, the culture down there, you know, they work and they play on Sundays, so they're not used to that, setting aside a day for the Lord. I figure there's lots to do on P-Day, but you have to search for it. We did a lot of nothing on P-Day, you know, just because down in hopes that you don't look for it. But if you look for the fruit stands or, you know, the gift shops, those are the fun things to do. So I served July 2013 to end of January, beginning of February of 2014, and then I went back out in May and came home in June that same year. So I served in Homestead, Florida for the first 7 months, and then I came back home. And then when I went back out, I was in Jupiter, Florida for a little while until I came back home again. Homestead is, I'm trying to think of one word to describe it, but it's a huge melting pot. You have a lot of like your retirement communities of what you think of Southern Florida, like, you know, the people retire and they move to Southern Florida during the winter and then move back home during the winter. Or the summer, yeah. But there's also a lot of different communities of, you know, you have your African American communities and you have your Cuban communities, and just everyone kind of congregates there in Homestead and around is the neighboring village, or not village, city. It's kind of it's the most southern tip of the peninsula, so it's kind of actually says it's the most southern point of the continental United States if you don't include the Keys. It's, I don't know how many miles, but it kind of goes like, you come out of Miami, you're going to hit Homestead right before you hit the Keys. So anyone that's visited the Keys has been through Homestead, they just don't know it. It does have a NASCAR speedway, which is kind of fun. You know, there was a whole week of NASCAR races, and so you have a lot of tourists come in, which we weren't expecting. We didn't know the NASCAR schedule. Suddenly there's a huge RV population to contact that we didn't know about. As well, there's the Air Force Base there in Homestead, and so we had a lot of military servicemen and their families that we were able to teach and contact and get to know. Imagine, you know, Provo, Utah moved over to Florida. You know, you add some palm trees, just because it's a lot of residential neighborhoods. You know, there's some wealthier neighborhoods behind all the gates, and there's the government housing neighborhoods. There's a lot of regular grocery stores and shopping centers. There's no big malls there. But, you know, we kind of had it all. There wasn't like a major industry or anything. Everyone kind of traveled up to Miami to go to work. Other than the Air Force Base, that was it, you know. Because Jupiter was my second area, and it was a very wealthy, had a very wealthy part, because there is the island next to it that, you know, like Tiger Woods has a home there. And so there was a lot of wealth on that island, and then you come off onto the mainland and you have the same thing as Homestead, and that it's you have a mixing pot of different cultures and different economic statuses, and, you know, so you get a lot of everything there. I started a blog when I came home, just to help me like deal with it, because not only was it like a huge disappointment, but it was kind of crushing as well to come home as a missionary to know that like you couldn't do it. You couldn't do what thousands of other people do all the time. I wanted to serve and I couldn't, and I kind of felt chipped a little bit. I guess is a simple way to say it. And it's definitely been a struggle the past little while. I feel like I'm in a good place now though. But it was definitely a struggle coming home and feeling like, you know, was I not faithful enough? Did I not work hard enough that I wasn't worthy to be healed? That, you know, I wasn't able to overcome my illnesses to let me serve. And it's definitely like put doubt in my mind occasionally. You know, did I do what the Lord wanted me to do? Did I serve a mission like He wanted me to? Did I fulfill my priesthood obligations? You know, like all these things. But as I've continued to draw closer to Heavenly Father, as I continue to pray, as I read the scriptures, I go to the temple, I'm able to still feel peace in the Spirit, which helps me to know that like I'm still doing what He wants me to do, and I'm still on the right path. I feel like there's a lot of times that missionaries come home early from their missions, and they definitely feel judged or mistreated by other members. You know, a lot of people just want to be left alone. There's a huge like stigma that you can't ask what happened, you can't talk about it. And I feel like I definitely made sure that when I came home I did talk about it. I let everyone know what was happening. I let people know where I was in my treatment. You know, I let people know exactly what disease I had, you know, what the illness was called. And that transparency allowed me to not feel the guilt and the shame that I think a lot of people do feel. I didn't feel like I had to hide from my ward members or friends, because they all understood. They knew what was going on. They all understood, and they were able to feel compassion, empathy, even if they didn't quite know exactly what I was going through. They were able to try and relate, which helps them to feel comfortable and help me to feel more comfortable too. So there was an article by Elder Bednar called "That I Might Not Shrink," in which he describes having the faith not to be healed. Specifically, he talks about this couple that he was diagnosed with cancer just a couple months after their marriage. And he went and met with them in the hospital, and he's talking to them, and they asked for a blessing. So he was going to give them a blessing, but he wanted to discuss some things with them first. And he asked them, he said, "Do you have the faith not to be healed?" Meaning that if it is not God's will that you overcome your cancer, that you have the faith to move on from this life, and that his wife would have the faith to continue on faithful to our Heavenly Father, even though like their prayers were not answered. And after I read that article, I started to gain some peace that, I have the faith not to be healed. I have the faith that if, the C. diff didn't go away, if the doctors couldn't heal me, cure me, I had the faith to be able to go home, to be able to still be strong in the church, to be able to serve, to be able to get married one day, to do all the things that I was supposed to do, and that I wouldn't let this speed bump, stop me from continuing forward. Thanksgiving Day of 2013, it hit 50 degrees, and the world stopped in southern Florida, because not one person has a furnace down there. There's no need for a furnace. And so when it hits that cold, everyone dies. They stay inside, they put on coats and blankets, and they don't move. I put on a sweater and I was good, but that was the most extreme. There were a couple of days we had like a tornado warning. The tornado warnings are, we have the hurricane season, lots of rain. And the rain is not rain like Utah. It's huge, because each raindrop is big and it comes down in sheets. So you're completely soaked in 30 seconds flat. I never saw an alligator, which is kind of disappointing. Like other people have seen alligators, or down in the Everglades there's tons of boa constrictors, huge boa constrictors that you can go out and catch. They want you to catch because they have an overpopulation. But I never saw any. I think moving past differences, understanding that everyone is different, and you just move past it because we're all children of God. I think rejection was the hardest. Just, working so hard on someone and then having them fall through. And you just have to learn to keep going. There's more people to teach. So we were tracking and we ran into this one home, a woman named Anna, and she started crying, immediately, and just was latching onto everything we were telling her. And she's reading the Book of Mormon like crazy, 20, 30 pages a day. And she's coming to church every week and was baptized within a few. And she told us that she'd been praying for angels to come for the longest time, because she felt so alone in her life, and her family mistreated her, and she was living with her sister, and she was just not in a good situation. She was a political refugee from Cuba as well, so she didn't have much support here in the United States. But she told us that she was praying for angels to come, and as soon as we came to their door and we knocked on her door, she knew that we were the ones that God sent for her. We were her angels. And so she had complete faith in everything that we taught her. She believed it, and she prayed about it, and she felt the Spirit and knew that it was the right thing. A lot of people think that coming home from your mission, you have to become normal again. Everyone asks, how long have you been home? Are you normal yet? Your mission is your new normal. You don't need to go back to what you were before your mission. You should keep all those same habits. And your mission self is your new normal. It's wet. It's super hot and wet. We'll get 90-degree weather and 120% humidity. So I don't know how you can prepare for that, but pack dry. I packed what was on the list and I was good. So expect miracles, because miracles definitely are going to come on your mission. The Lord loves his missionaries and he loves his work, and he's not going to let missionaries fail. He's not going to let you fail. And he's going to bless you with miracles and the Spirit to guide you in all that you do. You're going to meet people that you don't expect to meet. You're going to be led to places that you would never go in your life, because the Lord has prepared someone to meet specifically you. The Lord wants you to succeed, and he's going to make sure that he's going to help you do everything that he can to help you in your success.